Okay, welcome to Monday evening live stream. Tonight we're looking at something super cool. This is the Nectar CS12, the Panorama CS12 channel strip controller for Logic. And I got to say, I've just had this hooked up for about an hour now, and my mind is already blown for how cool it is. I definitely want to say thanks to the team over at Nectar for getting this over to me so quickly. What an awesome device this is, and I'm super excited to dig even deeper because there's this whole set of functionality that's right on the surface, and then there's a bunch of things that look like you have to learn some of the keys and how to push some of them together in combination to do different things. And so I think that there's going to be a little bit of a journey here in order to really master it. But I want to just showcase a little bit about this. The installation went really smoothly. There was the one question I had about that we'll talk about a little later, and that's compatibility with the latest OS 10 operating system. But it certainly seems like it's functioning okay, even though it's not fully supported. This tool, my biggest question mark was, is it going to add enough efficiency or enough features for me to switch over and use it instead of my mouse or my iPad Logic Pro remote? And so far I'm super impressed with it, and I'll explain why as we get into this. I'm hoping that we'll get a few people on who have some questions about it, and we can talk and do some demonstrations with it. But if not, we'll certainly just walk through a couple of the features that I'm finding the most interesting right off the bat, and perhaps talk about some of the things that people have been mentioning online for what they feel like is missing. Because it doesn't have everything. I mean, this is not designed to have everything. It's not a mixing console. It has a great transport section, but it's not a full transport section. A lot of people are talking about the lack of a jog wheel, that kind of thing. So we'll dive into that a little bit. Right off the bat, the thing that I'm most impressed with, and call me like, I don't know if this is like too simplistic to even think about, but it's the way that the interface, the CS12, uses the colors that are attached to Logic that make this for me so far one of the more intuitive and pleasant things to use when controlling plugins. As an example, we have our EQ on the screen here, just over there. And when you're looking at this, the bands have colors associated with them. And when we go to reach for the Nectar, the CS12, you'll see the colors on the actual knobs, which are attached to the parameters on the screen. Those all have the same color scheme. And so we're not having to relearn or look for things. I can really easily orient myself to what's on the controller versus what's on the EQ versus, which things I'm doing. I don't even have to fully pay attention to which orientation the knobs are. So at first I thought, how am I going to tell if it's a horizontal set of parameters or vertical? Well, the vertical, for instance, the green all down, the green all down. So this is gain on the EQ, and this is the frequency, and this is the Q setting, right? And so that part seems super intuitive. Question in the chat already. I don't use MIDI controllers often besides to play. Can you explain people's complaints about the lack of the jog wheel? That's one of the questions I actually was wondering because I don't feel like I needed a jog wheel. I know a lot of controllers that have jog wheels. In fact, I've got my icon over to the side here, and it has a jog wheel on it that I can change and move between the session really quickly. And so maybe it's a thing about moving through the session really quickly. If we get anybody on here who actually feels like the jog wheel is so critical, that would be great to hear from. But we do have the knobs or the buttons that let me go through the project. Not quite like a jog wheel, but I don't think I'm going to miss the jog wheel right in front of me. And if I really need one, I have one just next to it. I'm going to try to, in my studio here, I'm trying to design now. I think I'm going to put a shelf on the wall that has both the CS12 and my 8, well, it's actually a 9 fader bank icon platform M+, which I really like. I don't feel like I'm missing anything with those faders on there. They're 10-bit faders just like the one here on the CS12. They're super smooth. And they're approximately the same size. So these two units, they have the same color scheme. They're going to look beautiful right next to each other. And so I think that that's what my plan is going to be. So the colors, I think, have just been so smart, and they react to whatever the color we have inside Logic is. That part just seems so intuitive, and you can tell that they care about it. Whenever this is like in sleep mode or turning on, like the whole interface has like this color sweep across it. I think maybe I can turn it off and back on without doing anything damaging to anything. Let's turn it on. Let's see what. So, I mean, you can see it's all about colors when it's even loading up on the screen. Yeah, there's like I think a sleep mode when I quit Logic. I'm not going to quit Logic right now, but it's super handy to be able to do all of that and go in there. So controlling Logic to a certain degree, we do have a number of things in this little section here that we can both use as is, and I believe I haven't really gotten into the customization functionality yet. I want to do more, but right now I'm going to learn all of the functions as they are. I mean, things like opening up the mix window. We have the undo button, metronome button, automation modes, transport. We can turn on or off the loop points, and we can set the left and the right. We have marker functionality, getting to the markers. So just a number of the most common features right there to get to. So I'm really excited to try more of those out and figure out what they're doing and what the use is. But really, I mean, that's all stuff that I'm going to have my typing keyboard and can do most of that from the typing keyboard still. So what then would be the big deal? And that is the plugin control, which is just incredible because it's putting the parameters in such easy access to be able to manipulate them. And this goes back and forth between a few different things. So for instance, we're on the track I'm on right now. I have the retro synth. I'm going to push this green button, which says channel, and that opens up the smart controls, and then the smart controls pop up here. So it's real easy to get to the smart controls, and I mean, those knobs are so smooth, and that's so getting into the smart controls, great, that's fine. But just going into the plugins, and I've been messing around with the Logic plugins, but we can also load up other plugins as well that are not Logic plugins. I'm not even sure right now. Let's just pull open the SSL native and see. So you can see on the screen that there are new parameters. You might not be able to read those because we are from a distance here a little bit on the stream, but input gain, compander on, compander attack, compander ratio, all of the settings, and then there's a page A and a page B, so I can go back and forth. Not nearly as color coordinated, but I would, I mean, there's still the ability to learn that the placement of which one is by looking at the screen really quickly and moving along. So the third-party ones don't have quite as nice integration, but it works with third-party plugins, which I think is a big deal. So we can go through and pretty easily access all of those things. I'm going to just make an adjustment here to the high-pass filter, which you can see on the screen. Cool. I have a feeling I'm going to be looking down more often than up with this type of situation. I don't know if that's good or bad. I like the tactile part of it. I mean, that for me, I think is the big deal. I like the tactile ability to reach down and have knobs, and not just knobs, but knobs that are nice, nice quality. And so I think for me, that's a big draw with this. Along with it, we have this little magnifying glass, which is like the fine-tune mode. And this switches it from 10-bit to, I think it was 14-bit, which means it's a lot more fine-tuned. I can go really slow and have, more control. I can go fast still, but I just have to twist the knob a bunch more. But it's really easy to just get in and do really fine-tuned controls with this. Okay, so if that's it, if the only thing is plug-in control, is it worth it? Well, it's not just that. There are more things. I mean, we have the ability to work on our sends if we had them loaded on here, so we could easily control headphone mixes, reverb sends, and other things. That is pretty cool. That gives us a lot of things. We have access easily to all of our inserts, all the way up to 16. And so we can easily get there through these buttons right there. And then we also have a few other things that I think are worth noting. The one fader is nice. It's a nice fader. It feels good. When I first installed everything and loaded this up, this actually had a little glitch to it. It wasn't moving right, but after I rebooted everything, it seems to have settled in and is doing a great job. I don't know if it doesn't look like that's a slower one or a more fine-tuned one. This one is just set. And then of course we have things like the mute, the solo, the arming, and we have little meters here. This is a nice touch to have a little bit of meters, although I'm still going to be looking at the meters in Logic because they're have a lot more data with them. So what I'm interested in is getting into more with this and really figuring out. One thing that I just grabbed right before the stream, I found one of my old pedals. This is just a clicker, right? Footswitch, a fader. And you can actually hook up two of these if you get a Y unit. So it's like you plug in this, like the TRS, and then you plug in each of the ends the TS. So you can have two of these. I just have one anyway, so I'm just going to use one. And on the back of this, let's see, Footswitch. Push play. It is a play button, or you can set it up for various things. But one of the things you can set it up for is to be start and stop. Let's see if that's what it is right now. No, that's record. Interesting. So I'll have to change that around. I don't want that to be a record option all the time. I want that to be maybe like a play. You can also, I think you can also set it up to tap tempo. So you can tap out the tempo that way, which is kind of nice. But I'm going to be using the Footswitch more. I think that's actually kind of a cool feature to be able to have the Footswitch. Now, you could have already been doing that. Footswitch is just like a MIDI data. We can program that to control Logic in different ways. That's actually, and most of this is not isolated to this one interface, right? It's just that it comes so nicely bundled with the screen and the high quality knobs and the fader. That part I think is pretty amazing. It's really well designed. This isn't using Mackie Control or Huey or Yukon. This is going right into Logic, kind of like the Logic Remote does. So they built it to interface pretty directly with it. And that's how you get all the colors. That's how you get the plugin access. That's how it works without having to do much in terms of moving it around, which is nice. And so I think that there's just a lot of like really tight integration with this. For those of you watching, we have a few of you now. Let me know in the comments if this is something you're thinking about getting, or if you already are getting it, or if you never want to get it. I'd love to have a discussion with you about the reasoning behind that and some of your thoughts about it, because certainly there's different points of view and none of them are right or wrong. But I am curious as to what it would take for some of you to actually invest in something like this. So put it in the chat. I'm curious, and want to perhaps look at why the CS12 works so nicely with my other fader bank, which is nice, because I do think that there's a place for both of them. They have overlapping information in a way, meaning if I move the fader on my other interface, that's the same selected channel, it moves the fader on the CS12, which I think is it's kind of funny that we can duplicate so easily some of that stuff. That Logic is, I mean, it's just control data, so it's not really complex, but there's some parts to that. Okay, Q says, I'm getting it. Looks like an excellent controller for writing automation during the mixing stage. Hakeem says, just ordered this morning. Awesome. What features are, well, so Q says, looking for writing automation during the mixing stage. And I agree with that in so many ways, because I do feel like that is what I'm going to be using it for. You can see on this project behind, and I'll move this out of the way just for a second here. You can see the automation on the project on the screen. So much of it is just a straight line because I was doing full movements down, or volume control, or reverb adjustment, but it's all like straight lines, which means I've written most of this automation with my mouse. And I mean, that's okay. But that's certainly the case with this. It may be like when I get here towards the end of this, here's a synth part that I want to do more with. And this was a question I had, because it seems to me, okay, here's the situation with this. I have a synthesizer that I want to control or automate the filter 2 cutoff, right? This is the ES2, one of the great old synths that we have in Logic. There are ways to do this, I think, even with the CS12, but really this allows us to control the plugins, not necessarily the parameters on the original instrument so easily. And there are ways, I think there's going to be, I think I just need to figure it out. But I do like that with this, we can do all the effects, but I would love to have all of the instrument parameters also built in so that I can page through all of them. I don't know how complex that would be in terms of something like Alchemy, which is, so insanely busy. The way I think I'll probably end up doing this thing would be to perhaps look at and see if the smart controls have that particular one. I don't see it. Let me look. So if I'm moving that around. No, I don't see any of those things moving. So we may have to come in here. There is a way to do user assignments. And so I'll probably have to assign one of those things to that, which is fine. But it's not as straightforward when going through and using this particular tool to control some of the instruments itself. What are you looking for specifically when it comes to stepped automation? I'm curious. Like, what is your goal in that scenario? Oh, I don't want to do that. Whatever I just did. Ambience, huh? Let's do. I'm really quickly going to, because I know it's filter 2 cutoff that I want. So I think I want to change parameter mapping. Let's do the ES2. Filter 2 cutoff. So now, because I assigned that, I can go into my smart controls, and now I will be able to control this that way. Let me switch my mode to... Oh man, there's going to be some fun stuff here. Ooh, read, that turns it off. Oh man, there's some good stuff coming. Let it brush. Let it burn. Let it. Ooh, maybe it was one. Which one is that? Oh, that's filter 2 cutoff, not the ES1. So I'll have to reassign that one more time. Boom. Although it should have been. That's funny. I don't know. Whoa. Something is weird about that. So there's a little learning curve with that one particular thing, assigning some of the smart controls. Let me see what you're saying. I like stepped automation. I like moving the frequency of an EQ band and steps, and also the gain and steps of that band for some creative fun sometimes. I think if I wanted to, I could do the step sequencer duplicate track with the same channel automate on step sequencer trick. That's probably for that particular thing. I might use the step sequencer, although the step sequencer is limited in the number of steps. You can't just put it across the whole song, but you could do it in sections and do some really creative things with that. Yeah, this won't do anything, I don't think, with the step sequencer itself, which is interesting. But that's, I mean, it's not the point of it. If you really want to do more step sequencer programming, then an iPad probably really does make the most sense, because it has the tactile interface where you can control it by pushing the buttons on the screen instead of having to use your mouse, for instance, kind of thing. But I am curious. I want to get in more in terms of figuring out how to control more with this. The other thing that I am curious about that I was just thinking, let's come down to this track for a second. And let's put the arpeggiator. I'm guessing. Yeah, it looks like we're not able to do anything with the MIDI effects. I wonder if they're planning on doing the MIDI effects with that. Because MIDI effects, I feel like, would be super important in terms of my workflow and being able to do things with it. Q also says, I just got into using the iPad as a controller for browsing my library presets as I've made hundreds and it's been incredible. Can't believe I'm just now using the iPad. Yeah, there's so many other features with that too. I still believe, and maybe this would be the ideal studio setup, right? Where you have in front of you maybe the CS12, and then on the left, the iPad, and on the right, the 8 or 9 channel fader bank that I have. It's like all three of those make like the perfect control center right in front of you. Because each one does something different. Each one helps with the workflow, but certainly there's some interesting things there. Oh, that was interesting. When I changed the data and number 1 disappeared on there. You can't see it. I'll move that back over for a second. There are still some quirks with the whole thing. I was just noticing when let's see, I'm here. There we go. I can see it says the channel EQ in slot number 1, and I moved my data knob and it just disappeared, even though it's still there. That seems like a little quirk. Cool. It's all tied together. Meaning it's not really designed for you just to stare down at the CS12 instead of looking at your screen. It's not designed, the iPad Logic app, remote app is not designed to look at it instead of your screen. They're all designed to work together. The thing I like about the CS12 over the iPad is that I can do things down here. It's like I can feel, oh, I'm on knob number 3. I don't have to actually look at it because I can actually just feel that, I'm at the end. I'm at the final one. It's like I'm going to be able to memorize and start internalizing, muscle memorizing which things I'm on so that I don't have to actually stare down. With the iPad, you have to look down all the time because it's a flat screen with no tactile. There's no, feedback to you as the user of what's happening. And so you always have to be looking down and making sure your fingers are in the right place. With this, you can start to memorize which button you're on by the number of buttons or which thing. You're going to be able to start using this without having to stare at it. And I think that that's the sign of something that's more useful in a lot of ways. Other questions. So a couple of you are talking. Let's get a couple more of you talking before we wrap up. Well, we're not going to go too long. I know a number of the people that regularly view this content are in time zones that are still waking up. And so we'll probably do one more stream tomorrow after I've used it for another 6 hours and be a more advanced look at some of the functionality in terms of pushing buttons and doing things that are there, which I think will be really useful. And maybe even put in some real world use situations, meaning if I'm working on a song like this, what does that song need to sound like? how can I integrate this really quickly into my workflow? Which functions am I still going to do on the software? How many of them am I going to do on this control surface? And so I think that we look at both of those things and we figure it out. But we have to actually put it into some real world situations to determine that. And so I think that'll be one of the next tests of this, is actually just saying, okay, what do we want to do with this? How do we want to make it work? And then we go off to the races with that a little bit. I need to reconfigure the room. Now that I'm doing more and more with control surfaces, I think it makes more sense in some ways to be able to move my where I'm sitting and what monitor I'm looking at. I use multiple different rooms for different things. When I do the live streams, I'm in a smaller room, very controlled with acoustics, and it's all headphone based. And so I can actually face one direction and do things, or face another direction and do things. It just depends on where I want to put the monitors, the computer monitors. And so that becomes the issue more than anything. Gabe says, oh, cool. Your channel gives me a lot of inspiration. What is your thought behind making this channel? I mean, I've been making videos on this channel for a long time, and I'm a teacher professionally, and I just wanted a place to be able to talk more advanced about Logic Pro. This has never been a beginner's channel. I don't know if any of you watching have ever noticed. I don't make a lot of content for the beginners using Logic for the first time. It's just not something that I've ever been interested in. Partially because I do it as my day job. I teach beginners how to do audio and music production. And so this channel's always been about, if I learn something cool, I share the cool thing. And so that was the reason behind this channel. A place to share the nerdy things that I found interesting. And sometimes people are receptive to that, and sometimes they say, why don't you cover this in a more basic function or a basic way? And I say, because I'm not interested in doing that. If you are, then you should make that channel where you do basic stuff. But in this case, it's my chance to ramble on. And I ramble quite a bit on this channel, which I find, I don't know, I find it just what it's supposed to be, I think. Anyway. But it does give me a chance to test out and use cool things like the CS12. And I've got a lot of gear right now that has the same look to it. So it's once I find a way to put it all in a place together, I think it's going to look super amazing. Thanks, Gabe. You're the best too. I love trolls. Actually, I don't mind trolls. Trolls are cool. I mean, there's a place for everybody on the internet. That's the beauty of it. Yes, I definitely want to make an actual video with more time under the belt. Although, so there are some things. There are some advanced things that you can do. In terms of the channel assignments where you create the user assignments, that's one of the areas that I want to dig more into, because I do feel like there's room. I want to do custom mapping. There's a whole program that comes with this where you can actually create custom things for plugins. And so I want to mess more around with that. I'm going to see if there's a way to do that either with the MIDI effects or the instruments themselves. I don't know. I don't have a lot of hope for that, because you would think it would be more obviously available here. But I'm going to try. I'm going to try to do that. And then I want to learn more of the buttons beyond the buttons. there's like things you can do with the shift key. I know that some of them are written here, but there are more than that. I read the manual, and some of it is like really obvious, and so it was sticking, and other functions are not sticking with me in my brain, which means either I have to just look at them again and use them a bunch of times, or they're just not ones that I'm going to be using. And that's often the case. If I read something and it's like, oh, you can do this, and I think, why? I don't think I ever need to do that, then I probably won't do it. And so that'll be a question mark for me. There was something I was reading about how the fader was supposed to move at the same time as the knobs, but I haven't gotten that to work at all yet. It's still just doing instrument level, but I don't know what part I'm missing with that. And so I got to figure that out. Because right now it's just doing the level stuff all the way through. So I'll figure that out. There's like the 3 or 4 things that I think are more advanced, and then I actually want to make a video about those, which would be aimed at anyone who has gotten a CS12. This is more of a conversation about what's the deal with it, why is it worth looking at, and then I want to make a video for those who are actually buying the control surface, and it'll be labeled like that, once you've purchased, watch this video next. Yeah, and Q, I hope that's the case too. So here was a couple downsides to this process. It was not what I would consider 100% smooth installation. And that's because I went to the website, I registered the serial number, and I put in my my computer information and versions and everything, and it didn't give me any of the stuff it was supposed to give me as downloads. And after like 20 minutes, I finally figured it out. I went back and I put in an older version of OS 10, and then it showed up. So it's just, I guess, really approved compatible with an older version of OS 10. And so, or Mac OS. I guess it's not OS 10 anymore. Mac OS. And so that threw me for a loop a little bit. Because I spent a lot of time looking for where the download was, and it didn't recognize my version of Mac OS as the right version. So once I figured that out, there's like a few step process. They encourage you to update the firmware, which the instructions in the manual were pretty easy once I had the right files. Then they want you to replace some presets in your music folder, and that seemed pretty easy too. That worked okay. And then I had the issue with the fader being a little bit funky, but after a little while restarting it works. So that's cool. And then now it's just a matter of reading the manual and figuring out the rest of it. So we'll see. I don't see a lot of place on their website for community. So hopefully someone starts something on Reddit or some other place. Maybe we could start some other database someplace of people who are creating them. We could upload it and make a Google Drive or something. Either one of those, some option I think would be doable for sure. Okay, other questions before or right now? Yeah, Q, I agree. Google Drive. We could start an open folder and just tell everyone who's doing this, create a community around it, because it is such an amazing tool. But we'll have to figure that out. Like how do I take, for instance, if I'm creating user things on the actual CS12, where do those live? I just need to figure that out so we can put them someplace and then figure out how to put them in other people's. And then there's the software, which I'll load that up real quick. Let's see. Oh, I think it's an instrument. So track, which I don't fully understand what exactly it is, but we're going to figure it out. Nectar, the nectarine. This came with it. And so, there's so many questions I have about this all by itself. Okay. You can't see exactly what I'm doing. I'll move that over again. So we have a plugin here. I'm looking at it down on the controller as well. But there's apparently a way to create some custom controls. This is the question I have about all of this. So this just lets me do not the logic ones though, so I don't know. We'll have to figure that out. It's almost like this is a whole separate workstation, but I'm hoping that what we can do is come through and actually create some cool maps with this. So that's next on my list. This is a whole separate thing than the CS12, but I think there's some promising things there that tie into the whole ecosystem of the product. So we'll check it out. Okay, this is a good place. I'll make sure to put in the description of this video that this is similar to an unboxing in a way, but not exactly, because some of the things that we talked about and looked at, it just goes to show how intuitive the surface features of the CS12 are. And so even if you open it up for the very first time, follow the installation instructions, get that all going, there's so much you can do right off the bat it's very easy to understand. And I think that that's part of the strength of this. And then after you master those basic parameters, then there's some advanced things that you can really dig into. And that's what we're going to be looking at in the next video. So next time we do, I'm probably going to try to do a stream tomorrow after we put a bunch of those pieces together. And then that one, I think, will have a lot more polished version of the advanced features. So stay tuned, and hope you're having a good night. And if you haven't bought one of these things, check out the next video we do. And if you're still not convinced at that time, then it's definitely not the right tool for you. But if you're like, that has some stuff, that's when you should really look at it a little deeper. Okay, that's it. Talk to you later.